This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop.
Got it in
Stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
Welcome to it. It is Monday, my friends, here on the Steve Gruber Show. I greatly appreciate you stopping in and giving me your support. The phone number here is 888-900-9966. If there's something you need to chime in about, feel free. Alex will be there to take your calls and talk about it, sort it out for you. 888-900-9966. Well, President Barack Obama and Russian President Vladimir Putin will meet face-to-face today for the first time in 10 months. Amid increasing Russian influence in the Middle East, as well as the ongoing crisis in Ukraine, underscoring their deep differences, the U.S. and Russia couldn't even agree on the purpose of the meeting, which will occur on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. The White House said it would focus on Ukraine and getting Moscow to live up to a fragile peace plan. The Kremlin said Ukraine would be discussed only for a moment and only if time allowed, with Syria in the fight against the Islamic State dominating the discussion. This is the latest measure of Russia's growing role in the war-torn region. It came Sunday when the Iraqi military announced it would begin sharing security and intelligence information with Russia, Syria, and Iran to help combat ISIS. So I wonder what Joe Biden would say now about the greatest success. Post-war Iraq would be one of the great successes of the Barack Obama administration, clearly one of the great failures. Meanwhile, Moscow is ramping up its involvement in Syria in defense of its ally, Bashar Assad, with activists saying the Russian soldiers are already on the ground in Syria. Already here. So that's going to happen today. We'll, of course, keep a close eye on that. But it's another just very visible sign of the weakness of this president. And he doesn't care. It's what he wanted. He wanted to make America just another country. Well, he's done that. Flooded us with immigrants, like the professor said. Taken away any authority and standing we have in the world. He's done that. The Russians running wild. And who is that good for? And the answer is nobody. Meanwhile, at the top of the Republican Party, John Boehner has said, I'm done here. I'm moving on. He made that surprise announcement on Friday. During his announcement and during some interviews he gave, the question came up about a government shutdown that could happen in a couple of days. Here's what John Boehner had to say about that.
No. The Senate is expected to pass a continuing resolution next week. The House will take up the Senate bill. We'll also take up a select committee to investigate these horrific videos that we've seen from abortion clinics in several states that really raise questions about the use of federal funds and raise questions about aborted fetuses that are born alive.
The continuing resolution, will that require Democratic votes to pass?
I'm sure it will, but I expect my Democrat colleagues want to keep the government open as much as I do.
Yeah, well, we'll see. And he says he's going to keep the government open, no problem. We've only got 2 or 3 days here before we run out of money. And then Boehner asked about what would happen in the next 30 days while he's still the Speaker of the House. Here are his plans.
Well, I've got another 30 days to be Speaker, and I'm going to make the same decisions the same way I have over the last 4.5 years to make sure that we're passing conservative legislation that is good for the country. So I expect that we might have a little more cooperation from some around town to try to get as much finish as possible. I don't want to leave my successor a dirty barn. So I want to clean the barn up a little bit before the next person gets there.
We'd like to clean up that dirty barn, too. Can you take Mitch McConnell with you Would that be too much to ask? Go ahead and take him along with you and see if you guys can get that cleaned up together. Put on some muck boots and get that handled, if you don't mind. Meanwhile, cleaning up the barn, Carly Fiorina taking a lot of heat for her comments about aborted fetuses and so forth and Planned Parenthood and what is the character of this nation. All of those comments came up. All those comments came up during the second presidential debate, and now she's taking a lot of heat. People accusing her across the board that the video doesn't really exist, and that she exaggerated it. But she's not backing down, stubbornly and steadfastly sticking to her guns, if you will. And here's part of her comments from Sunday morning.
Are you willing now to concede that you exaggerated that scene?
No, not at all. That scene absolutely does exist. And that voice saying what I said they were saying, we're going to keep it alive to harvest its brain, exists as well. Here's the thing. Yesterday,
so you saw that
I was
moment
at
on the
a
tape
football game.
You saw that moment on the tape.
Yes, and I would challenge Planned Parenthood. Here's the deal. Yesterday, I was protested by Planned Parenthood people who were throwing condoms at me. I don't know what that has to do with this. They're trying to distract the American people from the hideous reality that Planned Parenthood is aborting fetuses alive to harvest their brains and other body parts. That is a fact. Planned Parenthood will not and cannot deny this because it is happening. It is happening in this nation, and taxpayers are paying for it. Planned Parenthood desperately wants everyone to think this isn't going on, because when Americans realize it is going on, whether they are pro-life or pro-choice, they are horrified. This goes to the character of our nation, and it must be stopped.
And I think that that's a powerful statement and to the point. And does it really matter? I mean, it does matter for credibility as whether that scene exists. But I'll tell you what does exist. The videos that I've seen that do exist should at least give you pause to say, okay, what's really going on at Planned Parenthood? What's really going on at abortion clinics? Are they really delivering fetuses alive? Again, that's what we call babies, where I come from. And then using those to extract pieces and parts for experimentation. It's not some theory being taught in some class in some dark, university at night. No, this is reality going on where these pieces and parts are being sent to universities in the light of day. In the light of day for experimentation. And is it important? Scientific experiment is very important. How we get there, however, says a lot about who we are and how we behave as a people, and it does speak to the character of this nation. I think Carly Fiorina is right about that. Now, having said that, will she rise to the top? I find that unlikely. But she has brought the conversation to the top, and that is what these primaries and these races are supposed to be about. And that's why you don't just coronate one person like Hillary Clinton and say, there she is, let her go. A robust conversation brings these things to the forefront, be it immigration brought by Donald Trump, or Planned Parenthood brought by Carly Fiorina, or the disingenuous approach of the media brought forward by Ben Carson. These are all conversations that matter, which is why we do this process here in America, to vet our candidates and get to the bottom of it. 14 after on a Monday on the Steve Gruber Show.
Michigan, born and raised with Midwestern values and Michigan common sense.
All right, 18 after on this Monday. It's the Steve Gruber Show. Thanks for stopping in. This hour brought to you by Mesa. Good health, good business, great schools. Appreciate you dialing it in. Todd Corser and Cindy Gambert, the gift that just keeps on giving here in Michigan politics. It'd be all right if they went away. It'd be all right with me. I think we've had our fill. But when they both decided to run for re-election, well, it started back up. Here to sort it out with me, the editor of MERS News, Kyle Melinn. Kyle, welcome back.
Hey, good morning, Steve.
How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well. How
Good.
about yourself?
Well, after that Lions thing, it's like the season's over. I don't know. I'm all right. Yeah.
I can't believe you actually watched it, and I can't believe you actually have hope that they actually were going to do something this year. I didn't even bother watching the game.
Attaboy. That's the team spirit. You're right. I'll listen next time. I promise. Speaking about watching a train wreck or not, Cindy Gamrett, Todd Corser, the train wreck continues. It's like watching a slow motion train wreck, I guess. But it's possible that they could both win re-election. We've talked about that. And now a move afoot to prevent this sort of thing from happening in the future. Someone gets thrown out or quits or whatever. That's it, at least for a period of time. What are you hearing about this bill?
Well, I know that Lisa Lyons out of the Grand Rapids area is introducing legislation that would prevent Corser and Gamrat type situations from happening in the future. And it would say that if you resigned or were expelled, that you wouldn't be able to run for your own reelection that term. You could run the term following, but you couldn't run in that current term. I know that the idea has a lot of support among legislators. I don't know if that's something they're going to move quickly. I haven't gotten a sense whether this is something that's on the fast track or not, but it's certainly something that has support on both sides of the Capitol.
Yeah, certainly people are like fed up. 'Cause here's the question that I haven't heard answered yet, and maybe I haven't asked it. Well, what cost is this to the taxpayers for these special elections?
Well, there is a cost, actually. We took a look into that, and in Allegan County, they weren't planning on having an election for the entire county, and I think the same goes for Lapeer. So there is added costs, and they're not borne by the state either. They're borne by the local government. And so in one of their cases, we looked at this last week, the county has to eat up its reserves that it had in funding in its budget because it just didn't have the money planned for a special election that was going to be countywide. Because when you have a countywide election, then you have to hire the election inspectors, the cost of the ballots are printed up, and it's something that they're not expecting, and the state isn't picking up the dime. It's not like the primary the presidential primary in March. Now they were planning for that, and the state was going to pick up the tab for that because everybody's going to be voting for president. But this November one, this will be a special cost.
And do we have any idea how much that cost is going to be?
Yeah, I do. I think it was $10,000 for one district and $4,000 for the other.
So not astronomical, but still a silly expenditure in the estimation of most. I mean, sometimes these special elections can cost tens of thousands of dollars, but because I guess they're more limited.
Yeah, I'll have to take a look at the number. I'm just kind of shooting off the top of my head. I haven't read the number for a week, so
that's right.
It may be a little crusty, but
the fact of the matter
there is a cost. That's for sure.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is costing us time, effort, and money. And I guess the last note on this for the morning, though, they both stand the chance to win. Corser may be more likely than Gamrett, apparently.
Well, yeah, here's the thing. There are forces in both areas to try and prevent them from winning. And starting with Cindy Gamrat's district in Allegan County, we spoke with numerous people over there this week. The sense is that there is kind of a coalescing going around two candidates, Mary Whiteford out of South Haven and Jim Story, who is an Allegan County commissioner. And it seems like that's where the concentration is on both candidates. I think that Mary Whiteford would be someone that Lansing would really like to see up in Lansing. She's a very capable, seems like she would be a very capable legislator. There's a sense that if the county wants to go a lot more conservative, that Jim Story would be the best option. He's someone who's been elected before. He's the only one of the group outside of Cindy Gamrat who's currently serving. I guess Gamrat isn't serving now, so I guess he's the only one who's serving in an elected office. And it seems like both of them have the capability and the access to funding to make something happen quickly and know how to do it. And so that's what looks like things are going in that seat. Over in Lapeer County, there's a lot of good candidates here, and there's a real concern in Lapeer County about could Todd Corser sneak through in a field of 10 candidates, and it's because that you've really got some people who've got a lot of support and have the capability of winning, and if all that gets split up numerous ways, could Corser get in? And that's a real possibility.
Yeah, and that'd leave the people scratching their head now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I would think so.
The other thing that I want to talk to you about, and we only got about a minute for this, but I know it's going to be on the radar for a while now, and that is the state confirming higher blood lead levels in Flint in their kids than anywhere else. The state of Michigan releasing last week information. So there's a lead problem possibly in the water in Flint. This has far-reaching ramifications, far-reaching possibilities of how to correct it. And Flint might be not the only place that has such a problem.
Well, and here's the real problem. We don't know exactly where the lead is. Is the lead in the water from the source, or is the lead in the water after it gets into a person's glass, and it's because of the lead pipes that are leading into the person's home? Now, remember, we went through this whole project here in Lansing where the Board of Water and Light replaced all these lead pipes. You know, we've got all these splotches on our streets here because we got all these lead pipes pulled out of our house, and we got these new pipes put in where we wouldn't have this problem of lead in the water. And obviously, lead in the water isn't good. It's been linked to decreased intellectual capabilities in kids. It slows them down, and it really sets them back to have lead in the water. And so to find double the rates in Flint, you know, an area that is really struggling financially, is just not a good thing at all. And so I think that's where the focus is going to be, is to try and find out what this problem is. Is it because Flint has this new water source here off the Flint River, or is it because the infrastructure just isn't very good and is outdated in Flint?
We'll
have
to keep
go
an eye on
and replace
that.
a bunch of pipes.
Always a pleasure. Kyle Melinn, everybody. Got to run, Kyle. Thank you so much.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
Don't get suspicious, now don't be suspicious, baby, you know you are a friend of mine. And you know
All right, it's 33 after the hour.
things that I do are gonna come back.
33 after the hour here on the Steve Gruber Show. Appreciate your support. If you got some comments, questions, or concerns, 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. You can go to stevegruber.com, click the Listen Live button, take us all the way to work every day if you need. And if you want to go back and reflect on interviews or comments, go to stevegruber.com, click on the podcast. We have complete hours of the program, plus all the guests broken out independently, like our next guest, Tom Abrams, news anchor, reporter, and also author of several books, Allegiance and Allegiance Burned. Here to talk about the 2016 presidential campaign, who's up, who's down, and why. Tom, welcome to the program.
Steve, great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. So where do you call home now?
I live in Houston, Texas.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about your view from there of the playing field. Let's start with the Republicans. Obviously, Trump is still in first place, but it seems that some of his support may have wavered just a little bit. But you've got Ben Carson, Carly Fiorina, both of whom were on the program here last week, still doing very well. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Trump, one of the criticisms of Trump has been his lack of specificity as to what he would do, how he would make America great again. This morning, he's going to release his tax plan. He gave a hint about it last night, that he's talking about cutting taxes for the middle class and for corporations, raising taxes on some of the wealthier Americans. It'll be interesting to see if he continues to slowly drip out some more specifics, if maybe he regains some of the lead that he lost. I mean, I think it was impossible for him to maintain the 32, 33% that he was getting. Interesting to see how the others respond to his tax plan once he releases it today, and how specific he really does get. He got some criticism for his immigration plan only being this 6-page document, but he has certainly struck a chord with people across the country, with conservatives who feel as though the country's headed in the wrong direction.
And I've actually spoken to some people that I was surprised to say are strong, hardcore Trump supporters at this point. The problem is there don't seem to be enough of them gathered together to really push him over the finish line. Ben Carson has we're having a bit of a fall love affair with Ben Carson, but and he's from Michigan. He's been on the program here, and I think that he's even keeled, and I like his approach, and I think he's he's an interesting and well-educated man, but I don't know if he makes it either. And Carly Fiorina now having this battle over what's true and what's not true about Planned Parenthood. And, of course, the media treating her differently than they treat Hillary Clinton, clearly. So I don't know where any of those three go. Do you believe that one of these three will get the nomination?
Sure, you're talking about the outsiders versus the insiders.
Sure.
And you're right. You talk about this fall love affair. It really has been with the outsiders. You even have some of the insiders trying to position themselves as being outsiders. I don't know, ultimately, whether one of those ends up taking the nomination. It's still really so far out. Things change so rapidly, particularly once we get to what is essentially a very condensed primary season with the first 4 states taking, having voters within a very short period of time, and then that big Super Tuesday, the SEC primary. I still think ultimately voters still come back to the same people over and over again. So whether they're going to, on the Republican side, whether they're going to really ultimately choose someone who is a true outsider or whether they're going to go back to someone who's been there before, it's a really good question. I still think we're going to see somebody who's in the 6, 7, 8% right now take a big leap. And that person may be the one who ultimately gets the nomination.
Well, that's my money has not changed, Tom, and you wouldn't know this because we haven't talked much, but my money is still on John Kasich. I still think he is the moderate who has the best chance, who's positioned in the best place. Now, Marco Rubio, I think, is also proving to be a pretty strong candidate, and his numbers are moving. And Kasich sits there at 3 or 4%, and Rubio's, in some places better, 8 or 9%. But still a lot of time in this race, a long way between here and February.
A huge amount of time. You remember in 2008, John McCain was left for dead. He ended up winning the nomination after doing very well in New Hampshire. Again, I still think it's somebody who we're not talking about a lot that's going to end up being there. And it very well could be John Kasich. He's very popular in Ohio. He has both executive experience there. He was in Congress for a long time. He doesn't mince words when he talks. He's very plain-spoken. And he may have a message ultimately that resonates with people. Marco Rubio, same thing. You hear a lot of people picking him as their second choice right now. It'll be interesting to see once they go to the polls whether ultimately he's their first choice.
I guess we'll find out. We're on the line today with Tom Abrams. He has interviewed presidents, cabinet members, leaders in Congress, reported live from the White House and Capitol Hill. In fact, you've been all over the place. Chernobyl, the Badlands of Canada, Mexico City, Central America, 5 national political conventions. What does your conventional wisdom tell you, Tom?
About the race?
About the race, about how it's going to play out. Let me shift gears a little bit. Because I've said this for a long time. I'll see if I'm out to lunch, because maybe I am. You've been to more of these get-togethers than I have. I don't think Hillary Clinton gets the nomination. I don't think she's going to make it. I think that she is death by 1,000 cuts. She keeps bleeding and limping, and she's flatlining.
It's not been a good few. It's not been a good few weeks or months.
No, not really.
For her.
And she's not likable.
The mere fact that you have Bernie Sanders, someone who at the very beginning had no money and really ultimately not very much name recognition, for him to be slowly surging the way he has, particularly in these early states, when he is so far to the left, it's fascinating to watch that. And the fact that there's still Joe Biden. In all these polls, Joe Biden, who has not announced, is polling double digits, and in some cases doing really well if you look at just head-to-head without Bernie Sanders. You may be right. She may not end up winning the nomination, and if she does, she may be so wounded that whoever the Republicans pick, it's not even close come 13 months from now.
Well, she's not a likable candidate. She's not a warm figure. That's just the way it is. And any time a vice president has stood for the nomination, no vice president has ever not gotten the nomination from their party. So, with 20 points or 22 points or 25 points where Biden starts, he starts from a pretty good position, and the person in the lead is diminished, I think is a fair way to put it, with Clinton from where she started a few months ago.
Well, everybody gets a huge bounce right when they announce, right? I mean, but even before you had all these 16 candidates that were running on the Republican side, and you only had 2 or 3 early last spring, a lot of people who had not announced, who were just considering it, who, as soon as they did announce, got big bumps. So you know that'll happen. If Biden announces, all of a sudden a lot of the support that Clinton has, and even maybe some that Sanders has, is going to go to Biden. So it's a fascinating year. I write political novels. If I had written this as fiction, nobody would believe it.
That's true. That's true. If you so, where do people find your books, real quick, Tom, before we run for today?
Sure, I appreciate it. They're political novels, thrillers, and you can get them at anywhere books are sold, online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and you go to a bookstore and ask for them. If they don't have them, they can order them.
Tom, thank you so much. Great pleasure talking to you. We'll talk again soon.
Hey, good to be there. Thanks.
There you have it. Tom Abrams, everybody. All the books and the insight from all these different conventions and so forth. It's 41 after the hour on the Steve Gruber Show.
Getting your day started with news from around the state and around the world. Common Sense Radio. This is the Steve Gruber Show.
You know the day destroys the night, night divides the day. Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side.
45 after the hour. Greatly appreciate it. Break on through, my friends. Break on through. There's a lot to get through. Steve Bucci here, Director for Douglas and Sarah Allison Center for Foreign and National Security Policy at the Heritage Foundation. You know, we sit here, the president is going to talk to Vladimir Putin today on the sidelines, and Putin is like, we'll talk, maybe we'll get to that, maybe we won't. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing the fact that our president, so therefore our country, gets zero respect from Vladimir Putin. Steve, welcome back to the program.
Well, thanks for having me back again. And you're exactly right. I mean, this was looking bad last week when Putin announced he was going to go into Syria and started moving in troops and airplanes. But then yesterday to have the story break that the Iraqis have already cut a deal with the Russians.
Yeah, I heard that.
And leaving us out of this completely. I can't imagine what the National Security Council is spinning on its head right now, trying to figure out how to say something about this that looks good.
Yeah, I hear the 2012 called, and they want their presidential election back. My reference to Barack Obama, mocking Mitt Romney when Mitt Romney was exactly accurate about Vladimir Putin and the number one challenge we faced on the planet. And Barack Obama, the 1980s called and want their foreign policy back. Obama was an idiot then, and he's appearing to be an idiot now.
We are really. This is the worst situation that I can remember. And I was in the military for nearly 30 years. Had my PhD for about 28. I've been following this for a while. And this is by far the most dangerous and just ridiculous situation that I can think of in the Middle East.
Yeah, it's volatile, to say the least. Okay, so if the Russians put in armed divisions in Syria, and now we're hearing that Iraq is working with Russia and Iran to battle ISIS, so we're basically out of that equation, out of that discussion. In the Crimea, we know what happened there. The Russians are also pressuring up on the border of Ukraine further now, and with more troops and so forth. So, yeah, I would say it's an extremely volatile situation.
I mean, if you talk about the effect of the Iranian deal, this is the birds coming home to roost. We've shown ourselves to be so weak and so feckless in Ukraine, in Crimea, there in Syria earlier, and then with the Iranian deal, these Iran and Russia are saying, this is the same situation we were in with Al Qaeda, where Al Qaeda, prior to 2001, said, well, what are they going to do? Shoot a couple of missiles at us? We can take down their buildings. Let's do it. And we're in that same situation. That they don't respect us. They see weakness and they're acting on it, even though their hands aren't even that strong, but they're taking advantage of it.
Well, yeah, and the transformation of America continues, and in ways that I don't think we anticipated. I mean, we've seen presidents weaken us before. Jimmy Carter weakened us to the point of embarrassment a couple of times, but we got past that. But even folks like Bill Clinton didn't weaken America militarily the way this president has. I mean, Carly Fiorina is exactly accurate when she talks about rebuilding the Sixth Fleet. John Kasich's right when he says we need to rebuild the military. The military is in many ways disarray. Am I wrong?
No, it's if someone physically attacked us, our military would still be able to defend us and win. But right now, we don't have the extra ability. We don't have that flex that we used to have to be able to respond below the level of war that, frankly, keeps us out of wars most of the time. And now you add to it a president who clearly is not willing to use the military in any sort of meaningful way. When, unless it's something totally divorced from our interest like Libya, that's the only time he seems to be willing to use the military. You're supposed to only use the military when it's in our interest.
Yeah, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to work. And you know what's baffling to me? How is it so hard to understand that, peace through strength works is a general rule. It's not that hard to understand. But when you're looking at a budget now, that 60%, or maybe just a bit more than 60% of your budget is spent on entitlement programs, and what is it, 17%, 18% is spent on your military, and the military percentage continues to shrink, while the left continues to shriek and be, scream histrionically about, we're spending too much on military. It gets smaller every year. In 1950, it was 50% of our budget. Now it's less than 20% and getting smaller every day. And you just can't explain it to people.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And most people believe the myth that they see in the news and on TV that, this whole mess is because we're spending too much on the military. We are not the Soviet Union in the 1980s. We didn't get into this mess by ridiculous overspending on defense. We got into it by ridiculous overspending on domestic entitlements. And you can't then turn to a shrunken military and take more of it and think that's going to fix your economic mess.
Yeah, they just don't get it. Steve Bucci here, director of the Douglas and Sarah Allison Center for Foreign and National Security Policy at the Heritage Foundation. All right, so what happens today at the UN? I'll give you 30 seconds here for the last word. What do you think is going to happen?
Sadly, I think Barack Obama is going to grab at this the way he grabbed at the chemical weapons turn-in that Russia suggested, and he'll consider it a lifeline, and he will outsource our policies in the Middle East, in Syria and Iraq, to the Russians and Iran, all to an incredible detriment of our national interests.
Perfect. And there's some feel good. I feel fuzzy and good now, Steve. I greatly appreciate it. Very uplifting message here this Monday.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. A cold slap in the face is sometimes good for people because that means we can get our focus back where we need to be. We got a year and a half. We can make it, and we can get this thing where it needs to be. I greatly appreciate it, Steve.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Steve Bucci, director of the Douglas and Sarah Allison Center for Foreign and National Security Policy at the Heritage Foundation. Only the best guests for you here on the Steve Gruber Show. Only the best. We'll be right back.